Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Ridge Community Church podcast. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors at the Ridge, and our vision is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. So we want to bring you something hopeful and helpful for your everyday life, whether you've been following Jesus for a while or you're still trying to figure out exactly what you do believe about God. Now, you'll find on this podcast things that'll help with conversations about marriage and parenting and mental health and work, practical things to help you in your faith journey, and a lot more. So whether you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app or you're watching on YouTube, be sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the hopeful and helpful conversations. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Podcast. I'm really excited to share with all of you today's conversation that I got to have with Michael Stead. Michael's actually a really good friend of mine that I met in college. He works in the business world now with a company called Snowflake, but he has a really big passion for helping others grow. He's mentored high school and college students for years. He was a high school football coach. And he spent the last 4 years working and walking alongside young adults as he goes through a curriculum he designed to cover the key things that they need to know before graduating. So whether you're a high school student, you're a young adult, or a parent, I think you'll find this conversation super helpful. This is my conversation with Michael. Well, hey, Michael, thanks for coming on to the Ridge Podcast.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a special one too. Obviously, a friend coming onto the podcast is always super fun, especially because we went to college together. So spoiler alert to anybody who just skipped over the intro where they found out about that. But curious, how's your summer been?
Oh, man. The summer's been really, really good. I actually recently got engaged. And then,
you did.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. And my fiance loves going out and hiking. So her and I went over to Yosemite and then to the enchantments that are here in Washington State and hiked 55 miles this last week, which was a blast. My feet hurt. And you probably can't tell on the video, or if you're just listening online, I'm a big guy, former football player who is now hiking. And so the knees were hurting.
Do you have any pro tips to somebody that wants to become a hiker and do the enchantments, especially if they've got football injury knees?
Yeah. Footwear, number one, a good attitude. And then I would say I'm not a outdoorsy person by any stretch. I'm a social outdoorsy person. If friends are doing it, I'll jump in. Yeah. Good food. You have something to look forward to. So that's at least my take on it.
I love the hacks. That's awesome. But hey, for those of you for people that obviously maybe haven't had a chance to ever meet you, Michael, would you mind sharing a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live here in Seattle, Washington. So I know John. Went to the University of Washington. So the other UW for all those who are in the greater Madison area. And I currently work for a tech company called Snowflake. It's the most millennial sounding name in the world. And I formerly did sales and now do some support on the sales side. So I like talking to people for a living and doing some cool quantitative stuff. But in my spare time, and I think what we're more talking about today, I also have a huge heart for college age folks and just kind of that transition in life. And so I've tried to make sure I stay pretty consistent with that age group. And yeah, excited to talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you the first time I heard about some of your work with college students, I know you'd been mentor for a long time with high schoolers and with college age students, is that you had kind of been in the process of putting together a little bit of a guide on how what things that somebody can, I don't know, help their life when they get out of that age, or things that you wish you would have known. I don't know. What's your official title for that?
Oh, yeah. I just call it things I wish I would have known going from college age to career. And it was just the genesis of it was really just I wish someone did that with me. And it was like, well, if I'm not going to sit around and wait for someone to do it, what if I just put this together? I was probably 25 or 26 at the time. So not even that far out of college. But I figured, I've learned some stuff and I just would probably enjoy hanging out with some of and for me, I generally do it with guys. So generally, what would it be like to be in their shoes again? And what are some of the things I would want to know if I was them?
So what was your process for putting that together? Was that like talking to mentors? Was that reaching out to other people? What did that look like?
Yeah, I kind of came up with a first, let's call it like outline. And how I thought of it was more as we go through our life, we keep on having to expand our knowledge or come into tension points with different things. So as we grow up, like family is the first thing that you have to figure out your relationships with, then friends, and then like your freedoms. You can drive now. And then going into post college, especially, or post high school, if you're not going to college, there's some new things that are in tension again that you now have to take control of, that you have responsibility for that you didn't before. And so the first one was like your identity and direction. And I kind of looped those together because they're really interrelated. The second one was relationships. You now get to be your own person. There's no one you're necessarily underneath anymore. And so you get to dictate, what do the relationships look like? And then the last one was around finances, which is probably the greatest hits and the thing that's most interesting for folks, especially at that age group, because they're like, what the heck do I do with money? But it's more about wealth, how to think about wealth, and then also more tactically around money and finances.
What's the separator between those two for you?
Between wealth and money.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's like wealth is basically what you consider valuable. And money is one of those things that generally people consider valuable. Another adage I love to use, and especially things I wish people told me then, was like, money is potential that you get to spend on things to realize the potential. So if your whole aim in life is to build up potential, but you never use it, was it just a waste? So trying to have something to provide a different perspective than what the world provides, as far as just saying, like, go get as much potential as possible, and instead say, what do you want to do with this? And then also, wealth has time in it, your interests, your passions, let alone cash or securities or real estate, etc.
Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like from a faith perspective, it's all the gifts and stuff God's given you, all the tools in the tool belt, so to say, or we'd call like, hey, how do you steward this or take care of the things that you have really well, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole talents parable definitely fits into that box.
Is you kind of gave us a sneak peek there, but is there something that you feel like when you're chatting with students, or young adults, really, I guess,
Mhm.
that maybe that's a better phrase to use,
Yeah,
that they yeah, there you go, that they're particularly eager to learn about?
yeah, absolutely. I think to virtually every single one is going, what do I do with finances? Because it's a brand new place that they have, let's just call very limited context to.
Yeah.
So that's one for sure. The thing I would say that's most interesting is just hearing someone else talk about their experience. One thing I didn't mention in your question before is not only did I source like what I thought like were the new tension points, but I also asked some different friends and such to validate or add to it. And
Yeah.
based on that, built it out. One of the key concepts that I feel like always hits home for young adults is actually the concept of like, who's the central character of your life? And why I say that is because everything that you're going to do in your life is going to have meaning or purpose, because otherwise you're going to stop doing it.
Yeah.
But if you are the central purpose or the central meaning of it, when you hit trials, and hard things, suffering, wilderness, nothing makes sense. But the first thing and the foundational thing that I think always is a breakthrough, and I wish someone told me even when I was coming out, was like, what if Jesus is the central character of your story, and his goal is to mature you and to give you joy and peace in a life that's full of not those things?
Yeah.
And if you take that as a central point, all the rest of the things fit underneath that. And then I just try to get really tactical because I'm a tactical guy. So it's really ethereal. They're not here to talk to a pastor. That's not what I needed when I came out of college. I really wanted to know, like, what's the umbrella and what fits underneath it.
Okay, so you talk about having that central character. Is there any like how do you describe that to somebody so that it clicks?
Yeah. So one thing that, like, I'll just dive into, like, for instance, we always start on identity. And the main reason there is because if you don't know who you are, you don't know what to do with it. And it's really easy to be able to go out and say, I'm going to go in this direction or this direction. But if you don't know your gifts or your talents or your strengths, you're going to have a lot of falling on your face, which is fine. You just can minimize it if you'd like.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
within the identity piece, it's about understanding, all right, God, like who do you call me to be? And then how can I go about finding that? So I'm practical and tactical. I'm like, hey, have you heard of these different tests, like whether it's the Enneagram or even Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders? Get to know yourself. And your identity is dynamic. It's going to slowly shift across time. One of my favorite mentors says about every 7 years, your body totally regenerates all of its cells, except for brain cells. And so you effectively get a refreshed version of yourself every 7 years. It would be, let's call it short-sighted to say that you're not going to change as your body even changes there.
Mm.
So as you discover yourself, it's like, here's your baseline, and then grow on what you're going to be able to find interest in or what you're going to enjoy. So that's like the starting place. Who does the Lord say I am? What gifts do I have? And then the next piece is into the direction side. So what do I go do with that?
Yeah. It almost sounds like you're creating a framework for how all the other, we'll call them tactical things, like how you make decisions for all those other things, right? So you just get done with high school and you're like, okay, what do I do with my life? Or you're in high school and we'll take a step back and you're trying to figure out what college you want to go to, or if you want to go to college, if you want to do a trade school. And it's like, how do you even make those choices? And it sounds like what you're saying is, well, first figure out who you are,
Yeah.
and how God made you, because that's going to frame those other pieces. And what's so interesting is I feel like that's not something that, I mean, that's not something they talk about in school, right? They're not like, hey, let's figure out exactly who you are when you're a junior in high school. Um, and so it does sound like it's like one of those key foundational pieces to help you like make better decisions that, like you said, maybe leave you like fumbling a little bit less as you just graduate.
Oh, absolutely. I would say I'm a framework guy. That's what I feel like I needed leaving college, leaving high school, whatever it might have been, because had this innate desire to know I was doing it right. And candidly, with it, there's no right way to do it, and that's what I have to always kind of express. I wish someone told me, it's just there's no right way. And I always actually tell everybody who goes through this, I really hope that you one day do this with others because your story is going to be different than mine. But I'm
Mm.
going to give you one example and go live out what you think out of it.
Yeah.
And the things I would say out of like direction such as I can get into analysis paralysis. So what the metaphor I love to give is if we're a ship, you can't turn a direction unless there's wind in your sails, aka you need some momentum. So
Mm.
it's best to start doing something and allow yourself to be moved than to sit there and do nothing, unless the Lord asks you to sit there and do nothing. That actually can.
Yeah. Man, that's really good. Okay, so I want, and in a little bit, I want to come back to having Jesus as the central character because I think that colors some of this conversation too. Um, but what is there anything as you're talking with young adults that they're like, oh, I hadn't even considered that before, and it's like kind of like a surprising thing that you kind of bring up during your time with them.
Yeah. The central character for sure is always a surprising one that no
Yeah.
one's ever really like expressed to them. Um, some of the other ones are related to how people have poured into me. When we go into relationships, for instance, I break it up into five different things. It's relationship with our God, with ourselves, with our family, with our friends and community, and then romantically.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I was not and still not a married man, so I'd always bring in someone who at least had that side of the relationship to see the end goal. Um, but one of my mentors, again, Jeff Vansel, commented a lot about how to do friendship well, and that's something that we think we all are well equipped for. But one of the things that he really points out is the idea of covenantal friendships and the idea that you can stay committed to someone. So not like, actually, marriage is an example. Your family is an example. You're gonna have your family the rest of your life. You are committed to a marriage with someone for the rest of your life. But you can actually do this with friends too.
Mm.
And that's actually how our hearts were built. So that's why whenever you fall out of relationship with someone, it hurts so bad.
Mm.
It's because innately your heart desires to have the long term there. And give a little bit of a framework for them to say, how do I go about doing that?
Yeah.
So I would say that's always like a life altering one that I hear about or get questions on later. Um, if it wasn't about like 401ks and IRAs and what are they?
Yeah. Okay, so uh, talk about, maybe you could share a little bit about like friendships, like how, um, what can that look like? How does that shape the decisions you make and the things you do?
Oh, totally. So I'll give you the framework because people love frameworks, or at least I love frameworks. So there's to me like three concurrent circles of friendship. The outermost is your colleagues. They're people you hang out. They're your classmates. They're your colleagues. They're your people you see. You may or may not see. Is kind of the idea, or
Yeah.
you don't have any huge emotional connection to, or revolve a lot of your time around. You'll give time to them if they ask for it, but you're probably not seeking them out very much.
Mm.
Uh, One level in is your community. You probably spend 80% of your time, and your geographic location heavily dictates what this looks like. And they're
Yeah.
constantly the people you're evaluating. Do I want to get closer to? The people you enjoy, you'll actively schedule your time with them. And the innermost is these covenantal friendships. And the beauty of this is, candidly, a lot of them come from out of your community. But time and geographic location matter less because you finally get to understand the character and the heart of someone. And
Mm.
once you get to that level, then when you catch up with them, it's that whole adage that people go, I haven't seen them for years, but when we just started talking, it's as if we picked up where we left off. That's
Yeah.
because you know their heart.
Mm.
And so with that, the framework how I kind of describe with friendship is that's what we're trying to hope for and go after. And we're actually made to have many of those.
Mm.
And so if you're actually orienting your life in that relationships are actually the highest form of wealth that you can have, it's one of two things that last forever in this life. It's the Lord and relationships because he makes us to last forever.
Mm.
Then this is where you want to spend your time. So I'd say that that's kind of how I frame things for relationships is actually, hey, how do I build greater relationships because these have the longest value? And I get to take ownership of that now that I'm no longer underneath my parents' household, or maybe I'm in transition out of that.
Mm. Okay, so Mr. Tactical and Practical, can you give me a tactical thing to go after those types of relationships?
As far as like going after covenantal friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing that I feel like in cultivating those friendships is actually expressing how you feel about people
Mm.
and doing it to them. So, for an example, John is one of the people I have these relationships with, or a covenantal relationship with. And the heart of John is to always want someone of high integrity who wants to find the best in others, wants to have joy in his life and in the life of his friends, and wants to be driven by a mission. And now that I understand these things about John, I can actually say, hey, John, like these are things that you hold on to. And I freaking love and admire about you. And so by me expressing those things, one, I get closer to the heart of John, and he gets closer to my heart. And two, I get to then try to interact with him with the deepest parts of it.
Mm.
And so those things which change the least. And if I get to know those things that change the least, I'll get to know the outer parts of John because everything comes out of those. So expression is one, living into it and actually doing some of the things like sharing some of the time together is absolutely how you go about it. There's no becoming a covenantal friendship without having the time and space. But the beauty of it is once you commit to it and saying verbally, hey, John, do you want to be friends for the next 50 years of our life? And putting actually a time span that's significantly in the future, it means that if John hurts me, then I can see past that initial hurt because I've committed to years of relationship with them. So I want to reconcile with them.
So one, that's really good. Two, I did not know you were going to use me as example. So I promise I didn't ask that as a leading question. And two, three, and there's just a huge quality of like feeling like somebody knows you really well. And when somebody knows you really well, it feels like man, it's just really empowering to and encouraging to your identity and to combat. You know, one of the big things where people really wrestle through, it's an epidemic really, is loneliness. And that's something that combats that is when somebody knows you well, you feel less lonely when you're with them and you feel less lonely in general. And so I love that because I don't think that's, I think we're kind of taught to have what I'll call transactional friendships, which is we're friends as long as it's uh, works well for both of us. I mean, there's an element to that even in all relationships, right? You don't want somebody that's harming you, um, but uh, that really is this: how can I invest in your life? That's really powerful. If we can, I'd love to go back. And so if we would look at something from like a faith a faith perspective, you talked about having Jesus as the center, as a central character of your story. I think there's a theoretical side of that a lot of people would nod and be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. If I'm a Christian, then that's what it is, right? And then, but it's hard to maintain that, and it's hard to actually practically live that way. And so, staying on the tactical stuff, how do you tactically kind of identify that, maybe first off, and then make decisions based off that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's the hardest battles we have as believers is to say that I'm not the central character of my own life, because the entire world is saying you are. Like, marketing is saying you don't have enough of something, so you need to go buy this. I'm in sales. I'm trying to sell when I find needs. So it's really easy to think of ourselves as the central point. What I've found generally is, I'll take it in the sports context. I mentioned I played football growing up. When you know that you're part of a larger team, it allows you to do things that might not be beneficial to you in the short term, but beneficial to you or others in the long run. And when I live on mission, when I live on a team, I'm actually able to go through more hardship and absorb things that would have hurt me otherwise, because it was maybe a shot on me, but I could see the longer term or the longer distance. So the way I kind of think about that, honestly, is in my day, if I find myself holding on to a lot of the words that people say about me, I might be thinking of myself too highly. It's like, I'm too important if this is all I can think about. Versus saying, what does this actually mean for what I feel like the Lord's calling me to, my identity or my direction, which He is the controller. And so a lot of things I have to submit to the Lord and just go like, God, like, I feel like out of sorts because I didn't do very well. I didn't perform very well in my job, for instance. And now, instead of internalizing that, Lord, I want to give that to you. And I've literally verbalized it. So, God, I feel really crappy because I didn't do as well as I thought I would. Can you please actually change my mindset on this and actually show me what the truth is here? Because if I process it with Him, then He's actually the central character. What does this mean for you and me? Hey, Lord, will you guide me into the next step? Because you have a plan. And always trying to frame up for myself as saying He is the one who's the actual person who I get to have my eyes and my future on. And I get to actually be an extension of Him and make autonomous decisions and such, and then submit it before Him all the time. So I think it's constant communication and processing my life with Him. Because if I process my life with Him, I'm saying I'm not the utmost. He's the utmost.
I feel like that takes a tremendous amount of humility to be in that place where that's kind of how you're processing things, because it inherently is saying, I mean, obviously you're not the central character, but it's inherently saying, I am going to put what's best for something bigger than me, trusting that God will take care of me. Yeah, I do think, man, you talk about things you wish you learned when you were younger. I feel like that's huge. Because I think it does, like it sounds like you're saying you're less, but really and it almost sounds like you're having less control, but really it's more freeing. So it's kind of like, it seems like a paradox a little bit. How do people typically respond when you talk them through that? Is that like an eye-opening thing? Is there ever pushback? What does that look like?
Oh, totally. For both.
Yeah.
I think it can be something that they've never heard before. And candidly, the world tells us you're God. What you're and like, especially your feelings are God. That's always interesting. And so putting that in perspective is the thing I wish someone would have told me. You know, feelings are indicative, they're informative to how you experience something, but they're not reality. And so, actually, I didn't think about it this way, but I was just talking with a friend recently, and they went through a really hard time. And if you are God and you go through a hard time, the world crumbles. But if you're not the central point, you can go through hard experiences, trials, wildernesses, there's all these different names for it. And you can actually come out with a greater purpose. There's a famous line, and it's from Banning Liebscher. He wrote Rooted, he's the head pastor of Jesus Culture. And I'm paraphrasing, says that pain without purpose leads to depression. Pain with purpose leads to maturity. And I wish someone told me that coming out of college, because I was about to experience a lot more of the emptiness and aloneness or lack of direction And if I was to understand that this is actually part of my growth, it allows me to take a step back from that. And that would change my entire focus point on, is this only happening to me? Like, what if my world is crumbling? Because everyone tells me that it's about me. Go follow your dreams, follow your passions. Those are good things, but you're not God. Instead, I'm part of a team. And it's kind of like saying, I think what I would best equate it to, I'm probably going too long on this, but I'm a sports guy, is that if you recognize in your life that you are part of a team instead of being the individual coach or player, your life's going to be so much more joyful and so much more peaceful because it's not all on you.
Man, that that's super powerful, because that, I think there's so much freedom and I think relief that can come from that mindset. Even if at first it may be a challenging pill to swallow. But I think that the freedom on the other side of that is really impactful. Okay. One quick question and then a wrap up question. So quick question. We don't necessarily have time to dive into all of the financial things that you share, right? But could you share maybe somebody who, and they want to do their best to start off, their life, their young adult years, setting themselves up well for the future. Do you have any recommended resources to go to? Do you have any, is maybe a guiding thought process that's helpful or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I would say finance or microfinance or your own personal finances has so many resources out there that you can take a look at. The things that I break down is that I was actually overwhelmed with the resources, or it was kind of like, where do I start? Do I just Google and find out? My whole thing is do this in a relationship. Go talk to a financial advisor. And chances are, like, you might be early on in your career and you may not be the most attractive person necessarily, but they have a wealth of knowledge to start from. And they might try to sell you on what their services are and whatever else. You can go in and just say, I'm informationally trying to understand this more. And that's their job, is to actually make you more financially literate, is the name of it. So I actually use relationship to be the first step there.
Yeah.
Things I would add there is, like, there are great money books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's the Millionaire Next Door. But the things I go through is like understanding a budget, and that budget means freedom, not constraint. That's like the number one thing that's a mind shift. And that investing is a good thing. It's not something to be scared of. So those are like two basic things.
Yeah.
But there's a slew of like nitty gritty tactical, where do I put cash or dollars, that I'll go through, because I wish someone told me their perspective.
I love that. And even if it's simple as, even if out of this conversation, your step is meet with a financial planner, advisor, man, you're probably ahead of most people your age if you do that as a young adult. So, okay, last question for all the parents listening to this, and maybe they have a high school student, or maybe their young adult still lives at home and they haven't left yet. What do you think they could be doing to start some of this process, to start helping them learn these key principles that kind of put a really solid foundation as they head out into the world?
No, that's a great question. Well, as a parent, you get to see up close and personal the development of your son or daughter. And how I kind of frame things as far as their development, to make it way overly simplistic, is the time of middle school is, do you like me, is their fundamental question they're asking. Once you move to high school, it's, do I like you? And then in college or post high school, it's, so what? So what does this mean for me? And that's what I would actually say is to go after, is ask the so what questions. What's the next level, the why questions about what they do or how they spend their time. So if you say you have a free Saturday and what are you going to do with it? They're going to say, yada, yada. Say, why are you going to do that with it? Because that's what every single young adult is trying to understand, is, why does this matter? Otherwise, you just get lost in that whole hamster wheel life, the rat race, that, as we so call it. So a lot of the questions I like asking are so what questions. That's why I get tactical, is because I don't want to stay ethereal, but I need to make sure that there's a connection between why am I doing this and what can I do about it.
I love too that you start with a question. It wasn't like, hey, sit them down and give them this 9-hour seminar on this stuff. It was a question. you're like creating conversation around these things. And I love that because it shows that you value those things. And I think that the questions we ask show what we value. And then two, it allows them to like process versus coming at them with this bunch of content. Do you think there's space for like tackling some of these, like the identity things and those questions earlier on?
Oh, absolutely. What I would say though is meet your child where they're at. I led Young Life for a number of years. I was a high school football coach, and I kind of found that I really got excited when kids were starting to ask the so what questions. And what I found was if I just gave them some advice when they weren't asking a question even around it, it just didn't matter. It just went through them. They weren't ready to accept it. So I would actually just be curious on take the different things of identity and direction and relationships and finances and find out where they actually have a question and start there. And if they have no questions about it, then the challenging point for them is to actually say, hey, we should start asking questions about this in general versus I'm going to shove information down your throat.
That's really good. Wow, that's high quality stuff right there. I mean, that's worth a listen, even if you had to listen all the way until now to get to it. Michael, thank you so much for sharing and for just imparting some of these really good questions and these. I keep on going to the word foundation, but these foundational life things that I think sometimes you kind of get, they kind of sink into your brain as you kind of go along. Sometimes people go their whole life and never have some of these key things quite answered for themselves in a satisfactory way. So I love that you're asking the questions and you're kind of giving really tactical solutions to how you can go after them. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Well, that was my conversation with Michael. There was so much really good stuff in there. I really do think his concept about the central character of your life really is a unique but a really powerful one. It changes your perspective and how you handle both hardships and successes, I think, in a really cool and really helpful way. And for parents, I think asking great questions that show the meaning behind what your kids do in life, that can be really impactful as well. So thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Podcast, and be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations.